on Bloomberg. Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew alongside Kaylee Lines in Washington with a special opportunity to speak with two cabinet members from the Trump administration. Energy Secretary Chris Wright is with us, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. They're joining us from Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana, Port Sulphur, south of New Orleans, the site of an LNG facility, a liquefaction and export facility run by Venture Global, approved in the first Trump administration and now back online in the second. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on Bloomberg. It's great to see both of you. This is a big investment by Venture Global, an additional $18 billion on additional capacity here. Secretary Burgum, how long will it take to be up and running?
These guys are moving at record pace here. This is incredible. Chris and I had a chance today to speak to over 1,000 of the 6,000 people that are working here. But Venture Global has got a new modular approach to building these plants. They're delivering this incredible. This is the largest construction project in North America, and they've been able to bring this on in 2.5 years, a project that would normally take over 6 years.
Well, and obviously, Secretary Wright, the goal here is to elevate U.S. LNG export capacity, which is already at a record. Ultimately, what do you see the capacity rising to, and what kind of demand environment do you expect that additional supply will be met with? I'm wondering about the implications for pricing dynamics, especially when you consider that tariffs are in place right now, retaliatory tariffs against U.S. LNG.
Great questions, Kaylee. As you can see, right behind us is a ship that arrived from Germany this morning. Pulled in this morning, it will sail before the sun rises tomorrow morning, less than 24 hours turnaround. So the fastest growing energy source on the planet for the last 15 years, by a fair margin, has been natural gas. So the outlook for demand growth for natural gas is tremendous all across the globe. The question just, where is it going to come from? And of course, it's best for American jobs, best for American prosperity, best for peace and security in the world if as much as possible of that comes from the United States. We've already become the world's largest exporter, and I think in the next few years, you'll see U.S. exports more than double from where they are today, with lots of room to run after that.
And you mentioned tariffs.
Secretary Burgum.
One of the things that I was going to say with a question about tariffs, one of the things that President Trump is looking at is that our trade deficits with other countries that would sell more to us than they're buying from us. And one of the ways to solve that easily around the world with the countries that we're speaking to is for them to buy more clean U.S. energy. This is a way to balance trade. It's a way to help get the U.S. trade deficit down, and that helps every American, because the gas that's going on in the ship is coming from all the gas fields across America. It's creating jobs all over America. And when we get at that scale and we're producing more here, it's actually helping us lower the cost of electricity in the U.S.
Understood. A lot of people, gentlemen, remember Plaquemines Parish, a lot of our viewers and listeners, as an area that was devastated by the BP oil spill in 2010. That put it on our collective maps in many ways. The local seafood industry was set back by many years as a result. Knowing the Biden administration halted LNG exports because of, they said, climate concerns, what assurances can you give investors, can you give our audience that climate protections will be in place in Plaquemines Parish this time?
Oh, yeah. Speaking of climate change, in the United States, we've driven down greenhouse gas emissions more than any other country on Earth by far. And well more than half of that came from one source, and that's natural gas. As I mentioned before, natural gas is just a fast-growing energy source. It's displacing coal in the electricity sector some places and growing as an industrial fuel. So the more LNG we export from the United States, and right here in Plaquemines Parish, there's meaningful reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, particularly as you export natural gas to Asia, which is where most of it goes. So I think it's not only an economic win for Americans, an economic win for our allies that receive the gas, but it's not only lower greenhouse gas emissions, but it just burns cleaner than any other fuel. Methane is a simple molecule and has a very simple energy transformation.
Secretary Burgum, how about you? What assurances could you give local fishermen in Plaquemines Parish that you'll be watching out for their environment with this new facility?
Well, of course we will be. The U.S. has the most stringent fish, wildlife, and environmental controls in the world. And so if anybody cares about the environment, they should want to have every drop of energy, every electron of electricity produced in the United States. But also, this is where the funding comes from. the seashore restoration funds that are occurring across the Gulf come from payments that come from the federal government, that come from the development of offshore oil and gas in the Gulf of America. So this is the primary funding mechanism. So the more we develop, the more we've got the ability to make sure we're protecting the environment.
Secretary Burgum, I'd like to ask you about another source of energy, renewables, as the Interior Department, right when President Trump took office, froze permitting for renewable projects on federal land for 60 days. We are starting to approach the end of that period now, and I'm wondering if we should expect the department is going to begin permitting for renewables projects again.
Well, we're taking a close look at all the renewables because there are some segments of renewable, particularly wind, and if you take a look at offshore wind being almost 3 times more expensive than onshore, that these projects wouldn't exist without all of the tax subsidies that they've received, and they're not necessarily new. Some of them increased under the Inflation Reduction Act in terms of the increased subsidies, but these subsidies have been going on for 30 years. This is not a young or new industry. It should be able to stand on its own by now. And there are a lot of concerns around some of these sources, and whether it's not in my backyard, not in my front yard, not in my view plane, or whether blades coming off of offshore projects. There's a wildlife concern with whales that have been raised. So there are opposition groups building for offshore wind, and President Trump is listening to them. He wants to make sure that we're doing it right and we're doing it effectively. And the renewable projects are intermittent, and we need base load. And we need more base load. We need energy addition, not energy transition. And we need energy not only to power industry and bring manufacturing back to the U.S., but we need it to power the biggest capital budgets in America are for the AI data centers where we're manufacturing intelligence. We need that to win the AI arms race with China. So we need more electricity, but that electricity's got to be affordable, reliable, persistent base load. And we've swung too far in the way of the intermittent, unreliable. And that's got to be fixed. We've got to turn that around. Our entire grid is at risk right now because we've swung too much to the intermittent.
Mm-hmm. Secretary Wright, I want to ask you about the strategic reserve, not the crypto reserve, but the strategic petroleum reserve that Donald Trump has said he wants to fill right to the top. I wonder what that means to you, to what level you're planning to refill the SPR when it comes to numbers of barrels, and how long it'll take.
So it takes a long time. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve can discharge oil pretty quickly, but filling it is much slower than discharging it. It's unfortunate that it was discharged not for a strategic reason, but for an election reason. So we drained half of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for politics to help the 2022 elections. That's reduced by half the energy we have stored in security for unplanned events. So, of course, it's urgent to refill it, but there's a limit to how fast it can be refilled. It's 5, 6, 7 years to get the Strategic Petroleum Reserve back to full, but we're dead set on doing just that. We got to restore in every way America's security.
Secretary Wright, I'd like to ask you about levels of a different kind, levels of headcount at the Department of Energy. As we know, next week, federal agencies have been given a deadline to present their plans to cull their workforce, part of the efforts under the Department of Government Efficiency. Do you have a sense yet of how many Energy Department employees may be cut and at what level of cuts it could actually start to impact the mission of the DOE?
We're working diligently on that. This is what's so refreshing to have a businessman as a president, right? Just the way you would run a business. Are you being as effective as you can? The goal of the Trump administration is to improve the quality of government services with less resources, less cost, less burden on the American taxpayers. So that's what Doug and I are businessmen. That's what you do. You're always looking at your business. How do you make it better? How do you improve it? Sometimes that's investment in technology. Sometimes that's streamlining processes, combining departments. So we've got an effort on that I think will ultimately deliver better services, but critically reduce the just massive deficit we've been running. Almost $2 trillion budget deficit in the last years of the Biden administration, not at wartime, in peacetime at near full unemployment. That is just a catastrophic course. So yes, we're forced into a situation that we need to move urgently and quickly on this, but I think we got a great team of people working hard on it.
And Secretary Burgum, last one to you, sir, as Trump has tapped you to be the head of the White House's National Energy Dominance Council. What should we expect to come from that, and when will we see something tangible?
Well, I think you're seeing something tangible today. Part of what Chris and I have been tasked to do as chair and vice chair of the National Energy Dominance Council is to unleash American energy. And we're doing that across the country. Alaska had 68 executive orders against Alaska that was restricting its ability to produce energy. Alaska was being sanctioned more than Iran was by the Biden administration. We have an opportunity in Alaska with projects there to sell energy to our allies like Japan and South Korea, Vietnam, the Philippines. This will again help reduce our trade deficits for those countries. It'll help bring prosperity at home. So whether it's building infrastructure that's critically needed, whether it's producing more electricity in this country to help us win the AI arms race, or whether it's cutting red tape to bring capital back to the United States, because all the manufacturing that's coming back, they all need more power. Part of the reason why President Trump declared an energy emergency is we've got an electricity crisis in this country where we don't have enough electricity. So we're working hard every day and working with the private sector. Chris and I are meeting with dozens of companies a week to try to listen to them and understand where's the red tape that's slowing them down from deploying capital here versus perhaps deploying it in another country. We want that capital deployed here to help create American jobs, help the American economy. President Trump's entire vision is if we unleash that, we bring prosperity at home and we bring peace abroad.
All right. The Interior Secretary Doug Burgum and Secretary of Energy Chris Wright joining us here on Bloomberg from Louisiana. Thank you both so much, gentlemen.